was in the south, more stubborn. During this, I think our troops have succeeded to hold the several advancements of the enemy and throw them back to the initial position. Yesterday, beginning with last night through the day, several times our air defense units have succeeded in firing down Azeri drones. That includes the Turkish produced in September 2020 Bayraktar type UAV. At this point, the situation is tense. The combat continues, not as intensively as in the daytime. I would like to emphasize in particular that this armed combat pursues a clear tactics that we very well understand. Our command has a very good grasp on it. And I would like to say a few words about these tactics in order for our expert community, media, and why not also certain other circles get more clarity. We're talking about the following. The Azeri armed forces often send subversive small groups infiltrating mostly the frontline settlements where there either are or are no inhabitants or have been uninhabited a long time ago. They film themselves there, disseminate the news, which is intended first for domestic consumption to feed into their own public, but often also lamentably affects our public and appears in our media landscape. There are settlements that have been vacated 10, 15 years ago and have already been deemed to have been occupied by the Israeli armed forces. On many maps and on the internet, they have been deemed to be under control of their armed forces, but to this day, they still lack control de facto. All entry and exit points are all entries and exits are usually destroyed by far-reaching fire or other activities of our units, but they're still considered to be, they are considering them to be under their control. I plead and I ask everyone, do not import such news into our media landscape, do not discuss them, and in particular, do not disseminate these elsewhere and whatnot. The situation is stable, it's controllable. There are certain concentrations or subversive activities still do not mean specifically any advancement or success of their troops. These tactics, by the end of the day, has been adopted by terrorist groups, which similarly have been affecting to weaken and erode the alertness of the adversaries. Do not succumb, please, to the effect of these activities. We have a lot of questions, but before we move to the Q&A and the second part of my communication, I would like to present to you a former contractual military serviceman, Harutyun Baghdasaryan, who went to the front line from CCN, who's taken part in the southern direction of combat for several days, but he was being wounded and is undergoing treatment as we speak. Please, Harutyun. So I'll begin by at the battlefield. We are in high spirits, well armed, and fight well in the battlefield. In this year of 2020, we are well motivated, we have ample weapons and munition. All of the boys are fighting well. Everything's perfect. What can we do? We're fighting against three states. and they're not gonna win. They're even bringing from Ukraine. Wherever they want, they can bring this. They will not defeat us wherever they bring this from. We have the weapons, we have the spirit, we have everything. They're not gonna defeat us anyway. Well, this is how it happened. This UAV came over and dropped this stuff, and that's how it all happened. We have the spirit. If my arm is fixed, I'll go back right now. I have the right spirit. The soldiers are lying there in the hospital. They pressured the medics to cure them. We're gonna back ASAP to defend our motherland. There were some shortages in food. If that were to be taken care of, well, the truck with the bread was on its way. They hit it. Once that's overcome, we will win. The bread truck didn't make it to us. As soon as it was on its way, they struck it down. So once that is taken care of, our spirit, even if Turkey comes in with its troops, even Azerbaijan, Syria, Ukraine, they will not be able to defeat us. Fix my arm. I'm gonna go there right away from here. Thank you. Thank you. So let's move on to the questions. Mr. Shurikan, you're here, you can ask the question live. Sputnik Armenia, Mr. Hovhannisyan. In the social media, there is this news in circulation about 170 Armenian servicemen being saved. Can you comment what's this about? No, we're not talking those quantities, of course. There are incidents, and there were these cases today and yesterday, especially during the advancement of our troops. They succeed certain groups or individual servicemen who during the combat the day before ended up elsewhere or got lost or were caught in a mousetrap. They emerge out of those situations, but there was nothing about this large formation. Can you give us an approximate number? No, it's not big numbers in any case. Several questions. Shushan Stepanyan, the press spokesman of the Defense Ministry, wrote about the Bayraktar being shot down. Is it a recent one or is it another one? It's about the Bayraktar that was shot down within the preceding 24 hours. Sometimes there are situations when our armed forces, our units shoot them down, but these shot airplanes fall between the lines or behind the enemy lines, and when our troops advance, when we take possession of them, then we publish it. So at this point, how many Bayraktars have been shot down? I can't clearly tell you. Over a dozen definitely have been shot down. Two more questions with your permission. If you since you're saying it's the hot combat is in the north and the south, in the center it is relatively calmer, because very often there are artillery crossfires between batteries. Sometimes those happen. Has there been a possibility, at least in the central segment, to remove the bodies, or is it out of the question? In the central segment, if I'm not mistaken, there is no issue of removing bodies. We haven't withdrawn from anywhere to leave bodies behind for this issue to emerge. The issue is more of a problem in the south, less so in the north, mostly in the first week between 27 and October 1 or 2. The Ministry of defend. Defense, MOD calls upon everyone not to use smartphones at the front line or in the army. What can you say about this? What's the situation? I've been always telling and I plead with you again, please refrain from that in order not to provide location services. If a military serviceman calls on the smartphone, that jeopardizes his life and life of others. And secondly, this will also prevent the leak of unnecessary information. Any information which is not processed may be harmful and damage our armed forces, which is why we reiterate our request to refrain from the use of cell phones. What information can you tell us about Ishkhanadzor and Khudaferi reservoir battles? I already share the information. I ask you and I reiterate my request when it comes to particular lines of combat and settlements. Do not ask such questions. I often hear blame about covering up something. Dear friends, without targeting anyone, I request you, I plead with you, please know that this is a very vicious war. From day one, I was telling you, do not look for any, if you have any primitive information about the war in which you could have accumulated even during this war, you need to understand that anything that is of hybrid nation, fifth generation warfare doesn't often have any front lines or any going forward, going bad, retreating, getting over, pulling back. This is volatile. Sitting behind your monitors, I would even say hiding behind your monitors, if you excuse me for saying that. It's easy to share advice. If you want, if you have the will, join the armed forces, get into combat, and you'll see that nothing is being covered up. You'll see it with your own eyes. So please do not refer to whether it's Ishkhanadzor, whether it's the bridge of Khudaferin, whether it's any other settlements. Please refrain from. We've told them, welcome to hell. Let them enter, let them attempt. If they try to do anything other than doing selfies to attain anything more than that in those locations, it will be hell for them, which it already has been. During war, yes, there is retreat. Retreat is a type of a maneuver. It's also sometimes intentional. It's sometimes it pursues the objective of pulling them into a mousetrap. How can you comment on Baku's statements about Zangelan? I think I already did. It's Zangelan's turn now, like they occupied Hadrut, like they occupied Fizuli. Now they have occupied Zangelan. That's all I can tell you. In your Facebook page, what are the retreats that you refer to? I already mentioned. I think it's redundant to repeat it over and over again. Several times, whether on Facebook or here, made the statement, the war is, you get good days, you get bad days. It's not easy to retreat for the troops. Sometimes the commander's idea about a retreat may not be well perceived by his inferiors, but if a commander has a clear plan and idea of an operation, and if that is necessary, you have to retreat, draw back, to reorganize for a better attack, counterattack, or draw into a pocket the enemy, and this will be a mousetrap. Gala TV, the course and dynamics of the battles, what is changing, in your opinion, in the tactics of the enemy, if they do have tactics? I believe I've already referred to that in various parts of my communication. Neither you, neither Shan Stepanyan have shared any information to this effect, but this has been actively circulating in the thousand-strong Facebook audience. How true is it that today in the southern segment there have been 180 Armenian soldiers rescued? I already denied that. Once again, what does retreat mean? Because perceptions of people vary. I apologize, I beg your pardon. I cannot explain this in order for everyone to perceive it the way the retreat is a maneuver, it's a type of a tactics, there are many objectives pursued thereby. I am ready and willing dozens of times a day to publish materials in Facebook, appear on broadcasts. I've spoken today in several venues. Please follow, stay tuned, and trust me. We have told from day one we're not going to stick to lines whenever there is great casualties involved. These are not cut in stone. In fifth generation warfare, where the number of targets that you strike in a pocket may equal those in the front line, doesn't make sense to incur additional casualties for that. You have to pull back to get a beneficial position, to create a mousetrap, to stretch out the enemy communications and strike them more effectively. I cannot share with you all of the lessons in operations and tactics that I've gone through 24 years, simplifying them for everyone to digest it. Please trust in the army in these heavy days. Do not foment a redundant, meaningless atmosphere of distrust. This is not addressed to everyone, but more often than not, this is caused by lack of any military knowledge. This is it. Thank you. Please stay tuned, follow our publications, and we certainly shall win.